Welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio. I'm your host, Deborah Bailey. And when I started this show in 2008, I was on a mission to promote women-owned businesses and help women succeed by providing resources and valuable tips from other women and men, small business owners. In each interview, my guests speak openly about their triumphs, the scary times, and tough decisions they have to make along the way. Women Entrepreneurs Radio is about showing women how to harness their natural strengths to achieve success on their own terms. Hi everyone, welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your hosts Deborah Bailey and Kerry Heaps. And thanks so much for joining us today. And, we really want to get together to chat about this particular topic, which you'll find out in a moment. But if you're listening to the show on Podomatic, you can also find it on iTunes. It's also on iHeartRadio, Spotify, other platforms. You can find out by going to womenentrepreneursecrets.com. You can click on podcast in the menu, and you will see a list of platforms the show is available on. So it can be whatever you or enjoy listening to. More than likely, you can find the show there. So we're going to jump right into this topic, and I'm going to introduce my co-host, Kerry Heaps, who's a seasoned entrepreneur of 14 years. She's the publisher of Pageant Platform Magazine and host of Pageant Platform Podcast. She's also a founder of Pitch Like a Bitch Media, an online resource for entrepreneurs and business owners who want to gain more media exposure, and Book.Speak.Repeat, a speaker submission service. And she is the author of Pitch Like a Bitch, Top 10 Tips to Pitch Like a Pro. That was published in December 2018. And they create your own media series for podcasting, publishing, and publicity. And Kerry has an extensive background in sales, networking, recruiting, and training. And she's a former model who specialized in trade show and print work, and an experienced judge on the beauty pageant circuit. So welcome back to the show, Kerry.
Thank you, Deb, so much for having me. I'm excited to be back with you, the listening audience. And yeah, it's been a while, so many exciting things happening, but I just cannot wait to dive into this topic. I feel like doing my little I told you so dance.
Yes, everyone. And I believe that I will also link to a episode that we did, I believe it might have been last year, talking about podcasts and podcasting and being a guest on podcasts. So that way you can also listen to another conversation we had previously. But this episode was sparked because of an article I saw in the New York Times on the 18th of July. And the title of that was, Have We Hit Peak Podcast? So some people seem to think that, I guess, there's too many podcasts, or maybe people are starting them for reasons maybe that they shouldn't. I don't know. But it's very interesting because in this particular profile of it says two freelance writers who were looking to grow their personal brands. And they were just doing 6 episodes, so, up to that point, and expecting big corporate sponsors to dive in and give them money. And I knew that Kerry would have some opinions on that, being a podcaster herself, and we connected when she was first on my podcast several years ago. So I wanted to make sure that we had this conversation. So, Kerry, what are your impressions of this idea of podcasting and getting paid and all this kind of thing that people seem to have about it?
Well, obviously, I think everybody, I think it's first and foremost, I think people look at it as a glamorous thing, just like publishing a book. Everybody wants to publish a book, but it's kind of like, hey, I see the glory. I don't know the story behind it. They don't realize all the work that goes into it. Same thing with the podcast.
Yes.
As you well know, Deb, you've had one for a long time. I've had one. I actually have two now. One that is revenue, we're utilizing it in a revenue generating format. And then the other one is non-revenue generating, strictly as a marketing tool. So, we've been doing this a long time. Both of us have, and it is very difficult to monetize. But I think that the general public and people who like podcasts, I just think that they see, oh, this is great. This, I should do this and I'm going to make a lot of money, and people make it look so easy. And it's one of those things you got to go behind the scenes and see what's really involved. Just like being an entrepreneur. People think, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. But then when they find out what they have to give up, what they have to do, they don't want to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to describe it, I think. And I forgot who I was telling this to about how podcasts started. Well, I can't say how they started, but I know I started doing mine during Blog Talk Radio days and YouTube. And that was a whole different thing. You call in on the telephone and da-da-da. And it's still chugging along. It's not like that's gone anywhere. Before a lot of people even knew what this was and what it was about and why should they become involved in it. So in time, we both saw this kind of activity start to go on where it seemed like some people were pushing podcasts as a way to make a lot of money. And that never seemed right to me.
Yeah.
I never quite got that slant about it personally. Have you encountered people who figure that, well, I'm just going to start this podcast and then I'm going to be rich?
Of course. Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to encompass more of them at some point in my career. That I can almost guarantee. So yeah, I see people who I've written a book on podcasting, and I think, you have something out there too, but it was in my Create Your Own Media series, and I did one on podcasting. So, people pick up that book, even though it's only like 30, 40 pages long, there's like a little workbook in the back where they can take notes and so forth. It is time intensive. There's little shortcuts, little things you can do to cut off some of the work, but for the most part, especially if you're wanting to monetize it, you're going to have to sell advertising. You can't get around that. People think, well, I'll do the Google AdWords thing. Well, okay, great. I probably get for my AdWords or revenue or whatever, because I don't host anymore on BTR, but I still get a check twice a year from them, and I think the last one that I got was like $60 for and then the one before that was, so it's about $120 a year. I don't know anybody who can pay their bills on that. So yeah, it's and then people think, well, I'll take it and I'll put it on YouTube, and then I'll put it on iTunes, and I'll put it on all these other outlets so I can make money. And, you're forgetting the one important component. You're still going to have to market that to get people to listen. That in itself is a lot of work. It's very time consuming. And, at the end of the day, if you're going to monetize your podcast, the easiest thing you can do is say, okay, we'll do a 30-second advertorial, 1-minute advertorial for your product, and this is what we're going to charge, and we'll give you a discount if you pay for 6 months worth of advertising. That's the best way to do it, simply because you're collecting the money yourself, the ads are getting done, and it makes your job a little bit easier. Everybody think that the AdWords thing and making money off of the links is the way to go. Well, if you don't have the money to put behind that to get the word out where you're getting so many impressions, you're not going to make that kind of money.
Right.
Just not. Even with really, really good content. I mean, like I said, it's, and I've paid for some of that advertising before. And at the end of the day, what I made back in my ad revenue covered my ad bill of what I paid for the ads. So it was like, I'm not doing this. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm sure you've had the same thing because you've been on BTR, you're on,
Yeah.
Podomatic, and there's opportunities for ad revenue. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, do I think people should sign up for those? Sure, because popping up a $60 check or $50 check here and there, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's money you don't expect. It's like go treat yourself to a massage or go have lunch or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you're expecting to make a living off of that, like when you read that article, and I think you're going to have a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, I believe I can. Yeah, because I downloaded it and
I think it's important for people to read it. I really do. Because at the end of the day, getting revenue generated for a podcast is, you're going to have to, there's one or two things you're going to have to do. You're going to have to put in a lot of time or a lot of money, or a lot of time or some time and a little bit of money and vice versa. But you have to, it's like anything else that's worthwhile. You're going to have to put time into it.
Right. Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And, we both were observing some people who push the idea that you can make tons of money with a podcast, either by being a host or a guest. And we've watched this and we've had our comments about it over time that we've seen this. So that's why I thought this was really so interesting. And, my take on it is also that it's not something that you start because you want to out of the gate make a ton of money, because in this particular article, these people thought they were going to get big corporate sponsors within 6 episodes. Not even close to being realistic. Not at all. And, you may have heard of people making tons of money. There's various ways that people do that. From what I've heard, some people charge for people to be on their show because they, I guess, have the numbers and they figure, well, if you want to be on, you've got to pay me or you've got to buy a product of mine or something. There's all kinds of reasons why that people may not tell you if they're kind of pushing this idea that it's so easy. And what you're saying, Kerry, is so true. It's not easy, because I know when I was on Blog Talk Radio, of course, you kind of call in and then you've got your show recorded. But now we're recording the show, then I'm going to go and edit it, and then I have to upload it, and then I'm uploading the information to my blog. I'm sharing it on social media. That's another step. I'm promoting it. That's all time consuming. It all takes time to do. It takes learning software. If you didn't know how to edit audio, it takes just a lot of time.
Yeah. And I will tell you just what I did walking through someone who had asked me about podcasting. And I said, well, typically what I do, because I'm on Podbean, which is similar to Podomatic, but it's basically the same thing. So when I produce a podcast, I have to schedule that, via Zoom, audio only, record it, and then turn around, and then we have to take it and add music to it. And we don't do any edits to ours. We just simply cannot and will not do that. So we have, edits, any kind of edits that we do is just to add music. So once we, and there's 2 different softwares we use for that, to mesh those together, to save them in the format of an MP4, to be uploaded to Podbean, and then it's writing up the text and the verbiage, getting the person's picture up there, and then publishing it, and then turning around and saying, okay, like you said, marketing it, sending it out to the person who was on the show, putting it out there on social media, putting it up on our site, even though Podbean makes it easy because it's embedded, so it automatically updates. That's one less step. But you're having to do all these little things and, like I said, consistently posting so people can hear the show, tagging people in it. And like I said, if you do have people that are advertising on your show, tagging those sponsors, tagging those advertisers as well. Yes. So they know that, hey, what you paid for actually happened. And just making sure that you're doing all of the little things that you're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
But that's just one part of it. Then, two, it's just figuring out with your podcast how in the beginning, how long is it going to be? How often do you want to do it? Finding guests can be very easy on ProfNet. Submitting a query for a guest. There's just a variety of ways that you can cut down on that. But you want to have a streamlined process, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, I guess that's going to be my new phrase today. At the end of the day, because it's at the end of the day here, you really want to make sure that, you have a really good process set up once you get going, and you make it systematic. But if you want to make money, I just don't see any other way around it except you need to be selling the advertising. Yes. And if you're not comfortable with that, I've seen people who say, but too, your podcast, it can generate revenue for you in another way. A great example of that is my other podcast for Book.Speak.Repeat. It's called Plan, Meet, Repeat. We don't make any money off of that. It is something that we use. It's about a 20-minute interview. We do interview people from the meeting planning industry, but the only speakers we interview are the ones that we're working with, that we're trying to help, because we take that interview and send it out to meeting planners on the speaker's behalf. So they can kind of hear the speaker in a different format. So it's a benefit to the speakers, but we don't generate any revenue off of that. We're not going out trying to find, people to advertise on the show. Right. Now, if our sponsors want to take part in it, great. But other than that, no. We're not doing anything like that. So it's kind of like an add-on benefit. I've seen other people who take their podcast because they are speakers and they want to use it as, hey, this is my show. I offer advice where people can listen to it and it helps them gain clients. So I always recommend anything like that. Even writing a book anymore, it's going to be a marketing tool for you that you can use. And I think if you look at it from that standpoint, rather than, hey, I'm going to make a lot of money off it, and I'm not saying you can't, but you're going to have to put the work in, and you're going to have to put in the right work.
Right. I agree with that. That's so true. And I think that's the thing, I remember a while back I was saying, wow, maybe I can turn this into a way to make money. And I remember saying, okay, I'm going to charge, but then some people kind of were like, well, I'm paying for other things, blah, blah, blah. And it's really hard sometimes to take something that you've offered for free and people suddenly don't value it in the same way. But because they don't really see the value of, now I've got this piece of content that I'm talking about my business, about myself, I can keep using it and using it and using it. And at the time, that wasn't as easy a sell, I think, particularly, as I said, had already been doing the show for a few years. But I did work with a client. I'm glad that you mentioned that, with someone who owned a branding business, and she wanted to have an interview where I had certain questions to ask her. And then that interview was posted on her site. So it was something used for her content, to show what her knowledge is and her expertise, and in a kind of interview framework, which I thought was a really great idea to showcase her by doing a conversational style. And as we know, marketing, networking, all of that is very important for you to build those relationships with other people, even in your industry, outside your industry. People will listen to conversations, which is why I'm big on making it conversational. People listen to that, they take it in, they go, wow, you're talking about your journey, you're talking about your business, you're talking about this and that, and people listen and they get to know you in a certain way that they may not know you otherwise, and they may have that sense of trusting you, because the audio, format is a very intimate format. And it really makes a difference in how you come across, and especially if you're having a good conversation with someone. I've listened to podcasts, and I can honestly say I don't always listen to interview podcasts. A lot of times I listen to things because of a hobby of mine. Like, I listen to a couple of guys who review movies, or I listen to a podcast about old Hollywood, or I listen to a podcast about music. And I enjoy the banter, and I enjoy the conversation. I enjoy that they like this artist that maybe I haven't heard a lot about in a while. And those are the reasons I often listen to podcasts. And I enjoy that. You know, I don't know what they're trying to make money or they're selling something, but it's something that's fun to listen to maybe while I'm working. And I enjoy that. And I think a lot of people do enjoy listening as opposed to always, you know, seeing visuals and video. But I think folks have to realize, okay, if I'm going to start a podcast, what are some ways I can use this to my benefit?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and not always think about, well, everything has to make me $1.
Mm-hmm.
What are some ways I can use this now to showcase what I know?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that's like with speakers, Kerry, I think that's like an excellent way for them to showcase themselves.
It is. And I will say, too, logistically, it's a way to kind of make sure that people know your area of expertise and what you have going on and, you know, what you're doing. And people can hear you in a different format. So it's not just about you being up on stage. It's not those speaker videos that most meeting planners know are, you know, they're edited and touched up and so forth. Mm-hmm. It's the real you talking and having a conversation. And, yeah, I mean, it's a great way to do that. And like I said, too, clearly if people do, you know, when we talk about the article, too, you know, for people to think that, you know, after 6 episodes, they're going to get major corporate sponsors, I'm just still blown away by that. But it also goes to show, we have talked about how all of these people who are so-called gurus are out there telling people stuff like this. And this is part of this is the problem coming back to bite the community in the butt, so to speak, because at the end, you know, all of these people who have been out there spouting that gibberish that, you know, you can make all this money and blah, blah, blah. And here's a great example of someone who tried to do it. And again, anyone who is thinking that after 6 episodes.
I know, that made me laugh. That's why I had to share it right away. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe what I read.
I know we're laughing about it, but at the end of I do kind of feel bad for the person who went through this, because who knows how much time and money they invested to put that together. Who knows? They could have paid someone $5,000-$6,000 that's like, oh, I'm going to show you how to set up a podcast to make all this money.
You're right.
And here it is. Not only did they not make any money, they're not even continuing with it.
Right. You're right. It is. It's investment just got flushed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard lesson to learn, but you know, clearly sometimes that's what has to happen, is that people have to learn their lesson and go, okay, clearly that was not a good thing to do. But also, too, I have always stepped back into personal accountability. We have to take personal responsibility for the decisions that we make. I spoke with someone earlier today on that exact same thing. This person keeps driving me nuts about, I want more referrals. I want to talk to more people. And they're like, everybody I've talked to so far says great things about you. And I'm like, well, of course they have, because we don't do a contract. They're continuing to work with me. So if they weren't, they wouldn't even be working with me. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to have to make this work. You can't depend on other people. If you need third-party validation all the time, this won't work. Don't waste your money. Go do the other marketing thing you were talking about doing, because we are not going to be a good fit. Right. So, so I think at some point people have to do the personal accountability and say, hey, I probably should have realized that this, you know, it goes back to the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Right. So. Yes, and we've heard those claims before. Oh, of course. Here. Yeah, we all have. But yes, you're right. And again, it's still, like I said, it still blows my mind that some people will fall for this. But, you know, we talked about this before the program. A lot of these people who have been teaching this stuff, they're kind of falling off to the wayside. You don't hear from them anymore. You don't see them anymore. And there's a reason for that. Yep. And we saw that coming. Okay, I'm going to stop that. We're full circle at this point, and the article just proves it. Really, at the end of the day, the article just proves it. You're right. And
also, like I'm looking at the article right now and saying between March and May of this year, only 19.3% of existing podcasts introduced a new episode, according to Blubbery, which is a podcast platform. And they're saying that a lot of times people aren't coming back to do more podcasts. And the thing is, yes, I understand that, because I have gone through my times where when I first started, I got a ton of people who wanted to be on, and I was excited to talk to them because I really started it so I could meet other business owners.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Kerry and I connected. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of good reasons to do this if you kind of know what you want to do with it. But then at the same time, sometimes you go through things that happen. You know, I've gone through a couple of life events where I may have stopped for a little while, but then I wanted to continue because I enjoyed it and I enjoyed sharing these conversations. I enjoyed having the conversations. I still do. So I kept going, and even through the different platforms I've been on, but I had to figure out, why am I doing this? And I realized I could use it for networking, connecting. I could share, which I enjoy doing. And I also, you know, from time to time, I share little, you know, commercials about my books and things I'm doing. So that's also another way that you can also use to share what you're doing, if you have a business or if you have a hobby. It doesn't mean you don't have to have a business and a podcast. You can share different things like that as well. So there's different reasons to do it, but I think we have to kind of know why we're making these investments. If you're going to make financial investments, there's a lot of ways to do this for free, but it's going to take time. Either way, if you're doing it all, it's going to take time. If you are hiring people, you got to look at, is this worth investment? Where am I trying to get to with this? If I'm just hopping on the latest trend, I think you need to step back and think about it. You know, so Kerry, do you think this is kind of like the blogging craze was at one time?
Here's the thing with I guess in a way, yes, because it was the same thing with blogging. Oh, you can make all this money with blogging.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It was kind of like an AdWord concept, and,
yes,
you know, linking up and signing up for companies that would give you a referral commission. So yeah, kind of in a way, but, you know, there's a site out there called, I think it's Radio Sales Cafe. I'll look it up online real quick. But, you know, they basically teach people who are in the radio industry and podcast industry how to sell ads for their show. And it's a big blog. They share different ideas. And, you know, but again, it's still people. Like, for example, if you have a health and wellness blog and you're located in North Carolina, you know, where you could actually sell advertising to the other people, like people who have a gym or people who have products like health and wellness products, and have them sell it, you know, sell the ads on specific shows, or give them some type of deal where you're doing an advertorial, maybe having them as a guest on the show, putting together packages for them. That's really what's going to get you to generate revenue. The ad revenue, unless you have, you know, it's just like I've looked at several different, like, YouTubers, you know, these people who are Instagram influencers and so forth. I mean, their videos are getting hits in the 1 million range. But even with that, their revenue that they're generating is somewhere between 20 to 30,000 a month, which is still very good. But who knows how much they're spending to get those videos out in front of people. And yes, you can build up an audience for that. You can build it organically, but that's not going to happen overnight. That could take up to 10 years to get those kinds of numbers. So a lot of those people are still investing money in ads. So if you do it, what people think is the hard way, they're like, oh, I don't want to sell. Well, guess what? You want to make some money, you're going to have to. So if you don't want to sell, don't, you know, start a podcast, but don't expect it to make any money from it. You know, find a different way to make that help your business. But if you're wanting to do it full time, that is the only thing I would recommend to people. Yeah, because you're right. Back in the day with the blogs, it was the same thing. You know, people, I think when it first started out, you had a few people who were making a couple $100 a month or maybe $1,000 a month. Okay, great, because all they were going to write the articles anyway. It was easy money.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing. People are like, oh, we can teach you how to make money off of writing for blogs. And you never hear about that anymore either because it's reached the peak, just like podcasting has.
Yeah, it has changed, and so many people trying to do it. After a while, it's not quite working the way people thought, or maybe how it worked for the initial people who were doing it. And that's another thing. You know, by the time a trend is already with everybody hopping on it, that's already at a point where it's not really going to be as effective as it might have been when it started out. And then people get tired of having to go through all the steps to create the content. Mm-hmm. So they kind of, well, they're not doing it regularly anymore. And then it's not consistent, and people stop looking for it because then they don't really see it coming consistently. Mm-hmm. And I know for what I'm doing right now, I've decided to kind of break mine into seasons where I'm doing a group at a time and then kind of taking a break and doing another group at a time, because what I do has changed. You know, I have a full-time thing going on now, so my time is not the same, and also I'm putting more effort into my writing, so that is my priority. Mm-hmm. So I have to kind of change how I'm doing this and how I'm presenting it. That seems to work so far. You know, I'm still getting people who want to listen and are getting something great out of it, and that's wonderful. That's the point. You know, that's why I've decided I'm doing it. But I think one of the things that I got out of it, besides meeting a lot of people, is also to kind of be a lot more comfortable with talking to people and just the networking. Because when you have your own show and you know, especially the Blog Talk Radio days, it was live, you know, so someone doesn't show up or show up on time, or there's a silence there because maybe they're not really being conversational, and you've got to find a way to, you know, kind of make that work. And it kind of teaches you how kind of gets you to hone your communication skills, I think, your spoken communication skills and listening as well. So there's benefits to it other than I'm going to get this big corporate sponsor. You got to look at those too, I think. You know, that's just my opinion.
And just to share with everybody, Deb, too, that website is radiosalescafe.com. So radiosalescafe.com, and that's basically a network for radio advertising sales professionals, and it's put together by Grace Broadcast Sales. So people can go on there, they can create a profile, and they have a lot of really great ideas where people are sharing ideas for contests. So these things can be used for a podcast as well. Right. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is going to be the way for you to make money, is just to go ahead and take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and create your own ads. And, you know, it doesn't even have to be something for, you know, it could just be like an advertorial where you're actually talking about the product. Mm-hmm. Like today's show is sponsored in part by, right. And start talking about, you know, whatever company it is, Ray Don's Fitness or whatever. And, you know, you can visit Ray Don by going to whatever website and, you know, putting together some type of package for that. And, you know, you could do contests. There's lots of different ideas that are available on that site that would work for a podcast as well. Mm-hmm. But my recommendation is, if you're going to monetize it, that's going to be the way you need to go. I mean, yeah, like I said, I've gotten to, and I mean, I had high traffic on my BTR site when I had it, when it was active. Mm-hmm. And I think probably at that point in time, you know, I may have been getting a check like every other month for maybe $100 or so. And, you know, I didn't really see a lot of high revenue there that could make a huge difference. I mean, did you kind of have that experience when you were on BTR? Did you participate in that, the ad revenue? Yeah, I participated in it towards the end, and mm-hmm. you know, I would get something from time to time. Mm-hmm. But I think what I had a problem with was getting so many ads popping up on the page. By the time I guess I wasn't, you know, involved in the revenue sharing the whole time. I did it kind of later. And then they were adding just so many ads on the page, and it becomes so distracting. I was like, oh my God, are people really sticking around to listen with so many things popping up? So I really didn't get a lot from it. And after a while, when they started charging and everything for storage, and I was like, you know, I'm rethinking even being here. So
that's kind of why I decided to kind of take the episodes off of there and put them, some of them I'm putting on Libsyn and distributing those right now. So, but a lot others that are older, some of the folks who I may have interviewed aren't even really doing that business anymore. So I haven't added those shows to the archive as yet, because that's not, it's not as much of a priority. But I mean, while it lasted, I thought it was a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But wasn't really sure later as the charges started to go up, and I really wanted to continue to leave my shows on there.
Yeah. And again, I think at the end of the day, people have to figure out what they want to do with their show. What's the goal? That's the first step, and, kind of go from there. But yeah, just like that article is kind of proof of, a lot of these people are just, that have been out there teaching, you can make all this money from podcasting. They're just not doing it anymore. They're kind of retreating and probably doing something else. And
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And, I saw a lot of people who were spending thousands of dollars putting that stuff together. And it just seems crazy to me because, your operation side is important, but if you're not going to have the money to back it up, there's just no point in doing it.
Right. And there's also those companies that also will charge you to introduce you to a podcaster. Some of them are owned by the same people who are pushing the podcast thing, and all they do is just introduce you. They don't really promote. They don't stick around to promote your show for you. All they do is literally make an introduction.
Yeah.
And people are paying them a lot of money. And I'm like, well, you could kind of do that yourself and pitch yourself. You don't have to go through all that. If they were doing more, then I'd have a different opinion of it. But from what as a podcaster, what I've dealt with is people just make an introduction. That's it. That's as far as they go. And the person's paying them maybe a couple $100 for that service. And I'm like, I don't know. But hey, you do what you do. But I'm just saying that you can also pitch people directly. But, another thing about this article was, there was a kind of assumption, but on the writer's part, I guess, that people only listen to podcasts when they're commuting. I'm not sure why they think that. But I know that when I go into the office, which I try not to do, because it's an open office, and I think open offices are spawn of the devil, and when I'm sitting there having to have my earphones on because everybody around you is talking, I would often listen to podcasts and just kind of listen while I'm doing something else. So, we're not saying that podcasts are bad or you shouldn't, if you have an idea for one, that you shouldn't do it. But the idea is just to be realistic about what your plan is, what you hope to get out of it.
Yeah.
And how much you want to invest in it, and not think that, I'm just going to do a few shows and then I'm going to have all this money coming in, because it's not like that.
It's not, and even on the media side where we do this, but we don't just do it's radio shows, podcasts, TV, writing opportunities, it's all of that. But still, at the end of the day, and here I go again with that phrase. Oh my gosh! So I'm catching myself now. I'm like, stop saying that. I feel like I got to drop a quarter in the jar or something every time I say it. Even with that, with, us helping our clients with media, podcasting is one part of it, yes. And podcasts are great. And I think it's also too, just, the newer ones that are out there, it is a great way for people to get practice their message, get perfected at it, because you never want to go, you always want to, my suggestion to everyone is, if you're a good writer, write the articles. If you're not that comfortable with your message, start with the podcasts, the smaller ones, graduate into radio, then go to TV, because you never want to start out at the top if you're not a good presenter. It's not going to help you. It will hurt you. And two, I find a lot of these shows, you find they'll start, there's a show out there, and then you'll reach out to them a year later. Oh, our show's on hiatus. or we don't do our show anymore. That happens a lot because, again, I think people look at, okay, I didn't realize it was going to take this much time, effort, and money to put into it, and they can't continue with it.
Right. That's true. That's very true. That happens a lot.
It does, unfortunately.
Yes.
And some of these people have great shows, but like I said, Pageant Platform podcast, we use that as a revenue generating tool, but we sell a membership. So when the girls sign up, they get a shout out on the podcast. They can, we can talk about their platform to give that an extra boost. We're not actively out there selling advertising right now, but we're getting ready to start doing that. But we're going to do it the old fashioned way because that is the only way to do it.
So do you think that getting corporate sponsors is something that is realistic for I can't say for the beginning podcaster. To me, I don't think it is. But what are your thoughts about corporate sponsorships?
My thoughts are with corporate sponsors is you can graduate to that. Don't start out coming out the gate. Again, if you're a news show like that particular person who had this show, I think it was a business show, wasn't it? The one that
yes, I believe so.
Okay, so a business show, that's real easy. You can start out in your local market and talk to your local insurance agent, join a networking organization. All of these people who, have products or services like a web designer who it doesn't matter where their client is located. Get them to sell them advertising. And it's the same thing with as you graduate, start locally, then go statewide, then go national, start looking for national sponsors for the show. And, if you're trying to get like a huge sponsor, like let's just say in the corporate arena, like maybe Staples or Office Depot, those would be great to have, but let me tell you something. It's going to take you at least a year to get in. You will have to become a vendor. There's a lot of red tape you got to go through before you even get in front of someone to say, and be prepared to negotiate because they're going to say, okay, well, we have so many dollars per second or so many dollars per minute that we're going to pay. Take it or leave it. And you're not going to walk out of there with a check.
Right.
Typically pay every 90 days. So I tell people those big sponsors, leave that on the tail end because everybody thinks, oh, well, I can go in there and get a check. No, you can't. It's not like the, 50 to 75 employee company that Johnny Davis runs where Johnny can actually pull out his checkbook and write you a check.
Right.
This is a multi-million-dollar corporation that has a pecking order and you will be no different.
So true. Yeah.
So start local. That would be my advice. Start local and just start go to some of the networking events in your area. Go to the chamber. You could go to, you could even make appointments for yourself and just get in front of these people, but have something to show them. Give them something of value. Have like a sponsor sheet out in front of you to say, this is what we're doing. We just started out, so we're not counting our listenership yet. So they can't factor that into the numbers. You're giving them an unbelievable deal out the door. And you can freeze their rates. You could say, look, if you sign up and you do this for a year, we'll grandfather you in as we're growing. We'll have you as a guest on the show. I mean, there's so many different ways you can do that. But you have more options. But the radiosalescafe.com will have a lot of different ideas that you can incorporate that would make it worth their time to talk to you. But that's going to be your best way to, if you need to have $3,000 a month to run your show and to live comfortably because you only want to do it, you don't want to go back out and work full time, whatever your deal is, something like that, then you need to plan on selling, to be on the safe side where you have $5,000 worth of revenue coming in. And that's attainable. It might take you 3 to 6 months to get that, but if you're working consistently every day and going out there promoting your podcast and doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing, it'll happen. But it's not going to happen without your participation.
You can't just start the podcast and magically it's going to come together.
Well, apparently that's what some people are under that impression.
Yeah, particularly these folks who thought that was just going to happen because they put it out there. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, and you really have to think about what it is that you want to happen if you start one. If you do one with business in mind, you're thinking, I'm going to get money from this, then you really have to consider all these things. If you're doing it from a hobby perspective, it's an interest of yours, it's something fun, that's totally different. You know, you can do what you want because it's not something that you're concerned about getting certain numbers. And the thing to understand is that a lot of times there is interest there in something that you may have thought was small or something that was a hobby. There's people who want to hear that, you know, so who knows? It could turn into something that's like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. Because, you know, I can honestly say I didn't expect to still be doing this 10 years later. But here I am, you know, so, but like I said, I didn't really think about revenue generation at the time, and the short time that I did, I really didn't have a desire to chase corporate sponsors and try to make the case to them, because that's not easy to do, and they want to see what they're getting for their money. And they may also be saying, well, we're paying you, you have to create the content that we want you to create. It's not like they're just going to give you a check and you do what you want. There is going to be constraints around that. So if that's not something you want to do, then you have to consider that as well. You know, people toss out corporate sponsorships as though it's free money. And, you know, I could tell you when I was volunteering at Dress for Success for about a year and a half, and, you know, they had me doing research for grants and things. And a lot of these corporations have foundations, but when you have to look and see what the conditions are and what they look for and what they want from you. It's not just, I need money for X. You know, they want you to make a case for that and put paperwork together. And all kinds of things have to happen that I think a lot of people aren't ready to do or didn't think they had to do. And then they're like, oh, so that's involved? I have to do work? You know, then people disappear.
Yeah.
But, you know, talking also about blogs, Kerry, something I've noticed, I guess just quickly to touch on is that, like lately I've had a lot of people contact me, like mostly small business and some larger ones, about putting blog posts on my blogs. And, you know, in some cases they'll be like, oh, you know, we don't want to put a guest post name. We want you to put under your name. And one person told me, oh, because they feel it's more well received by the readers if it doesn't say guest post. Have you had anything like this with your content, that people are approaching you in this way?
No, I have not. And it could be, too, it goes back to, we've talked about reviews for books online.
Yes,
where, you know, I think that's kind of something similar, where it's like, okay, I'm going to be sneaky about it now, so to do that. So, yeah, I think that's, when you said that, that's exactly what comes to mind.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation, folks, that we can't really share right now. But
that's a whole other show right there.
Oh boy. Yes, actually I'm going to write a blog post about that, about reviews. But yeah, I thought that was kind of odd. And I'm like, and more than one person has said that. It's not just one person said it. It's been a few people. And I'm like, well, you know, if one of my dbailycoach.com blog, a lot of times I write from personal experience of being in corporate and making transitions and all that. And I kind of write in a personal manner. So I'm like, well, someone's been reading my blog. I think they're going to be able to tell if someone else is writing about eyeglasses. You know, I think they're going to know this isn't her style of writing. So who are we fooling? And why should we bother to fool anyone? Can't we just be clear about, yes, you're a guest poster and you're writing something that I think the readers would like to know about?
I think it goes back to, they're looking for, oh, look at what all these people are saying about me because it's under someone else's name.
That's a good point. I missed that one. The whole influencer thing. Have we done have we had a conversation about influencers?
I don't think we have, actually.
We'll have to put that on the list.
Yeah, that would be an excellent, because, you know, there's a lot of people now that are talking about how these influencers, that they're, you know, they're not even able to produce the numbers that they're telling people they can produce. Same thing, because they've bought followers. They have all these, you know, so yeah, it's kind of a, again, people look at it as, hey, this is a great way to make money. But
Yeah.
if the work is lacking,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a great way to make money. It's not going to last.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, that's a good point that you are saying that is what they're trying to get to, like an influencer thing. But I let them know, I'm like, I am a writer, so I'm not just going to let anybody throw some words together on a page and then put my name on it. It's like, no. So you better come correct if you want me to do that. But for the most part, a lot of times I just don't put a byline because I just don't feel like I have to pretend that I had these thoughts that I didn't. But yeah, I think the influencer thing is also something else that drives a lot of these podcasts to be created. The idea that you have this, I don't know, you're this authority on X, but not even just because you have this experience or expertise, but that you want to appear to be influencing something or other. And that, I kind of find a lot of the influencer thing kind of icky. I don't know, I just do. So
I do as well.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. Yeah, we could have a conversation about that. But I can honestly say when I'm doing the podcast, I'm not looking at it as, I'm an influencer, blah, 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 blah. I just want to have a good conversation. Basically, that's my objective. And I hope the listeners getting something good out of it, learning something, feeling something about the story they're hearing, being inspired in some way, motivated. That's really where I'm coming from with that, So I'm not necessarily saying that I have to influence you to think a certain way, because to me, that's kind of nonsense. And kind of speaking of that, also I had seen this tweet by someone who was saying about, everybody on my timeline was talking about a specific show on Netflix. And well, this other show that nobody I know was talking about had more viewers, and they were all confused by this. And I'm like, do you really think everybody who watches things is all on Twitter on your timeline?
Yeah.
Are we all waiting with bated breath for you to tell us what to do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I just started laughing. I'm like, oh my God, you really believe that no one else will watch anything that you don't sanction?
Yeah, I mean, it blows my mind with what, that's just crazy.
Yeah, so that's definitely a conversation we'll have to have.
Yeah, we will definitely have to have that. But yeah, like I said, for anybody who's listening that's, and again, if you've gotten burned on a podcast, if you really want to have one, don't give up on it. It's just sometimes it's a learning experience and you just have to kind of roll with it,
Yeah, I agree. That's it. I think when you start out, you really have to think about what you want to get out of this, or maybe if you just say, I'm just going to do a few of them and try it out.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you kind of have an idea if you're going to do it yourself and not spend any money, which is possible to do, then you know what your commitment is. And then if you go from there and go, okay, where am I at? How I feel about it? Then you can decide if you want to move forward. You can give it a try. You don't have to commit to hundreds of episodes before you take stock.
Mm-hmm.
But Kerry, why would you think, why would you recommend that someone does start a podcast?
I think, and everybody's going to have a different reason, but, I think marketing is a great reason to market your business, to get more clients, using it as a marketing tool to complement what you're already doing, to expand your database. Like, for example, there's some people that use their podcast to interview potential clients. If you are, in the business arena and you want to interview business owners, like your target market is, entrepreneurs that are kind of trying to take their business to the next level or double the amount of employees, and you can help them with that, then you want to have those people that are on the cusp of getting that done. You could ask them what they're doing and, interview them on the show and then, then pitch them about becoming a client. That's always a good way to do it. And I would say also to provide, if it's just something you like doing, just like the Pageant podcast, it's something I absolutely love doing. I have been doing it for basically for free for many years, and we're just now starting to monetize that. So that's, if it's something you enjoy doing, it's a hobby, that's a good reason to start it. But once it starts to turn into more work than what you're getting out of it, then it might be time to back off at that point.
Yeah.
But I think those are three good things.
That's true. I think that's great. I totally agree with that, Kerry, because there's good reasons to do it, but just kind of, give it a try and kind of have it, and then look at it and say, well, why am I doing this, and what do I hope to get out of it? But definitely, I don't think you should, start it thinking I'm going to get all this money right out of the gate.
Oh no, yeah.
I don't. Yeah, that's not a good idea. You're going to be frustrated with that, and also, I also wouldn't recommend that you jump out of the gate thinking I'm going to be an influencer or whatever it is that you decided that you can be. If you are, serving a group of people who want to hear what you have to say, then quite possibly you may have a totally different experience. If you're covering topics that they want to hear and aren't hearing anywhere else, then it's quite possible that you're going to have a totally different experience than these folks did in that article. But also, and I'll just add, that may be something also to consider. If you have an interest or you have something that you see is not being covered, you don't think people are talking about, but there's an interest, you may be a part of a community that may like certain things, or whether it's some kind of entertainment, something that is fun or a hobby or something, and like, wow, I don't see a lot of podcasts about. That's a totally different thing. You may find that things blow up relatively quickly, but then you have to see, can I manage that? Is that something I can handle? Can I do that? So it's not to say that you're not going to find that things can do very well in a short amount of time. Not at all. But the thing is, a lot of times also, and I guess this is what I'm trying to touch on, is a lot of times people do the same things because they see other people do it. So they think, oh, there's something here because there's 5 million podcasts about business. So let me add my little perspective. Well, there's already so much. It's going to be a little harder for you to carve your little niche out there in terms of what other people are already doing and saying about. Are you adding something new to the conversation? If you do this in a way that now you can create some buzz around what you're doing, get some listeners. People want to hear your perspective because this is not one that's already been done to death. I think that's also something else, Kerry, that I, want to throw out there real quick, because I see that also a lot of social media where people will all jump on the same thing because they see it trending and they want clout, as I'm hearing, that is the thing. So they all jump on the same thing and talk about the same thing. And I'm saying, but there's other stuff out here that people wish they could see conversations about or hear conversations about, and no one's doing it because they figure there's nobody there who's interested. But that may be your quote-unquote gold mine right there. I'm not saying do it if you have no interest in it. But I'm saying if it's a hobby or an interest of yours or an expertise of yours that you may be ignoring because you think, oh, I got to be over here with all these other people. No, don't do that.
Right. I would agree, Deb. Yeah.
Like the Pageant thing, and I'm not saying that's small. I know it's not. You have your expertise, and the industry, along with also speaking. You know that you can provide a service, and that's a whole different kind of thing. I think
it is. It really is.
Like I said, I just don't want people to overlook things that they may really have an expertise and the desire to start something around, but then they don't because they think they got to follow the crowd. Don't worry about following the crowd.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem. Too many people are following the crowd, and then finding out that there's nothing there for them.
And I would say the same thing. People just have to kind of, you got to do what's going to work for you. People
will pick up on that. They'll pick up on your sincerity and your interest. So don't try to fake it. As I said, it's an intimate medium. People form a connection rather quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So take that into consideration as well. So, Kerry, do you have any final thoughts about this topic?
I guess I would say probably one of the final topics I would have is just, you need to do what's right for you. If you feel like you need outside help, that's fine. But at the end of the day, you got to be a business owner and make your own decisions. Don't let, if you have all these other people giving you rave reviews and telling you, hey, this is a great program to start your podcast, or you should do that, you're the one that's going to have to do all the work. So you need to do what's right for you. If you need third-party validation, and I think that would make an excellent show at some point, I find there's a lot of third-party validation in podcasting, and at the end of the day, these are the people, there I go again with that phrase, these are the people who are not doing their podcast anymore. You're going to have to do the work. Again, it sounds so silly, but it's just the littlest thing of feeling like, hey, I got to, all these other people are doing it and this person did it and they said they made all this money. Well, that's them. You're a totally different person. Your podcast is going to be different. No two are ever alike. So do what you feel like you can do and do what works for you, not what everybody else thinks is going to work for you, but do what works for you. You have to be, and I just had the same conversation with my business coach, you have to be in charge of your business. You are the CEO. You're going to have to make some pretty crappy decisions sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Correct. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would probably be the only thing that I would add to that.
Well, that's important though. That's really what people have to make the decision if what they think is right. And add that, and we've touched on this before, a lot of times people who are telling you how to do something are going to make a lot more money. Mm-hmm. They're telling you, well, you can start your podcast like this and blah, blah, blah. And they're making money off of your desire to get to this gold mine you think is there. Mm-hmm. But when you're actually doing it, you may find a different reception. Yeah.
You will find a different reception. There's no doubt about it. You're going to find a totally different reception.
Yeah. Because you're paying them to show you how to do this thing. Well, that's how they're getting paid. Mm-hmm. So how are you going to get paid?
You're going to have to work to get paid.
Right. That's the catch I think a lot of times we don't see in the beginning when we're following someone telling us how we're going to do something and how much money they've made. And then, you don't see that that's why they got paid. So, just something to keep in mind when you're making some choices and decisions about it. I would just suggest. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that we have, shared our thoughts on this topic. That's all I would say to that. Okay. So I hope that you got something out of this conversation and you learned some things about this. And I have the link for that article. I'm going to try to post that in the show notes. I think I should be able to.
I think that would be very helpful for everyone listening so they could take a look at that.
Yeah, just to get a sense of what that was about and what happened with those folks. That may be helpful for you to know if you're considering doing something similar. Okay? So, once again, this has been Women Entrepreneurs Radio with their hosts, Deborah Bailey and Kerry Heaps. And I want to thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. You can also join in the conversation on Facebook.com/Women Entrepreneurs and on the website, WomenEntrepreneurSecrets.com. And don't forget to listen in on dvcoach.podomatic.com and on iTunes.